As we begin devotions today, we started something new. We bring you 4 little segments all during the day, one from each of the passages that we're reading. Let's start today in Genesis. I want you to remember the truth that partial obedience delays the full promise. Let me say that again. Partial obedience delays the full promise. Let me say that one more time. Partial obedience delays the full promise. Now remember with me in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord said to Abram, leave your native country, leave your relatives and your father's family, and go to the land that I will show you. All right, so there's 4 things that he needs to obey. And he said, if you'll do this, verse 2, I will make you a great nation, I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. Now, that was a 4-fold requirement and a promise of blessing. Abram mostly obeyed. I want you to notice in verse 4, as Abram departed as the Lord instructed, and Lot went with him. His nephew Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. All right. He brought Lot with him. Lot was never supposed to go. And when you bring people with you that aren't supposed to be with you, it always causes strife. Later on in chapter 13, verses 5 to 8, we said the land could not support both Abram and Lot with all their flocks and herds living together. So disputes broke out. In verse 8 said, Abram says to Lot, let's not allow this conflict to come between us and our herdsmen. After all, we're close relatives. Now, you look at it, you go, now, Lot, why weren't you a better nephew and just not allow conflict? But God knew that there would be conflict. That's why he just said, none of your relatives comes with you. So Abram mostly obeyed, and because he did not fully obey, conflict resulted. We find the same thing with Paul and Barnabas. Set apart from me, Paul and Barnabas, for the work I've called them to, Acts 13. But then they took the cousin of Barnabas with them, John Mark, and later on conflict broke up the beautiful Holy Ghost team. So when you take people with you that don't belong, you're going to have problems. Another partial obedience comes in verse 10. At that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. And God never said go in and leave during a famine. God said go in and stay there. That's your land. But Abram, again, mostly obeyed. Now, this is when he lied and did not protect his wife, verses 11 to 16. He said, the Egyptians are going to think you're very beautiful and they're going to kill me because of you. So you've got a lot of situations happening down there in Egypt that will bring strife in the marriage. You've got God protecting his wife. Verse 17, the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarah, Abram's wife, to the point that finally Pharaoh, verses 18 to 20, throws them out of Egypt, says, I don't want you in Egypt anymore. He said, take her and get out of here. And he orders some of his men to escort them and sent them out of the country. Now, all of this partial obedience brings nothing but strife into his life. Now, when he gets back to 100% obedience, he returns to the land, Genesis 13, verses 1 to 4, and he builds an altar to God. Genesis 13, verses 5 to 9, he separates from Lot. Now, when he's all back in obedience again, then we begin to see the promises being renewed and restored and fulfilled. Now, brothers and sisters, here's the truth I want you to understand. Sometimes we think that partial obedience is obedience, but it's really not. It's still disobedience. And disobedience always has consequences, and disobedience always brings penalties. So please, when God asks you to do something, do what God asks you to do, when he asks you to do it, how he asks you to do it, and with those he asks you to do it with. When you start adding, you're getting into disobedience, and it always brings strife.